All right.
I
gotta run to the gas station out of pick you up, and y'all.
Now, Milwaukee police are searching for the driver in a deadly hit and run. It happened just before 12:30 this morning near 76 and Good Hope. Police say a 25-year-old was crossing the street when she was hit and killed by a speeding driver heading southbound on 76th Street. Family has identified the victim to TMJ4 News as Kiera Travis. They say she would have been 26 years old on Monday and was out celebrating her birthday with family. Our Brendan Jones spoke with her twin sister and parents as they work through their grief and wait for answers in this tragedy.
Just after midnight on October 11th, activity along North 76th Street near Westgood Hope Road followed its usual late-night rhythm. Traffic moved quickly through the corridor as patrons exited nearby venues, including Prime Social, only blocks away. Among them was Kiera Travis, a 25-year-old Milwaukee resident out during her birthday weekend. Minutes later, emergency dispatchers began receiving reports of a pedestrian struck at the intersection. When officers arrived, the vehicle involved was already gone. What remained was a damaged roadway, a halted traffic flow, and a case without a driver. As investigators worked backward, examining surveillance gaps, vehicle debris, and timelines, the focus shifted from the scene itself to what happened after the impact. Days later, a recovered vehicle and a man identified in court documents redirected the investigation. The case would move beyond a collision, raising questions about responsibility, decision-making, and how a single moment on a city street escalated into a criminal case still unfolding. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Kiera Travis was a 25-year-old woman from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was born and raised in the city, spending most of her life in neighborhoods on Milwaukee's north side. From an early age, she was familiar with the environment of a large urban city, including its social networks, transportation patterns, and nightlife culture. Her upbringing took place within a close family structure that played a central role in her daily life. Kiera was one of multiple siblings and had a twin sister, a relationship that was frequently referenced by those close to her. The twin dynamic meant that many milestones, social outings, and personal experiences were shared. Family members described her as closely connected to her siblings and regularly involved in family activities. Her support system included immediate and extended relatives who remained in frequent contact with her. Her educational background followed a standard path through local Milwaukee schools. Outside of formal education, she showed a consistent interest in creative expression, particularly music. Music was not treated as a casual hobby, but as a long-term pursuit. Kiera spent time writing, recording, and sharing her work within small creative circles. She was known to attend local events connected to music and entertainment, and maintained relationships with others pursuing similar interests. Within her community, Kiera was viewed as someone actively building a personal identity around creativity and self-development. She was recognized by friends as focused on improving her craft and seeking opportunities related to music. Her social presence was steady rather than highly public, but she maintained consistent interaction with peers and family members. At the time of her death, Kiera had personal goals centered on expanding her music exposure and continuing to develop her skills. She was approaching her birthday weekend, which had been planned as a social milestone rather than a major event. The days leading up to the weekend involved routine communication with friends and family about gathering plans, locations, and timing. In the days before the incident, Kiera made plans to spend time with friends and family as part of her birthday weekend. These plans included going out socially rather than hosting a private gathering. The purpose of the outing was recreational and aligned with common nightlife activities in Milwaukee. On the night of the incident, Kiera went out with others to a social venue located along a busy corridor of the city. The location was known for nightlife traffic, especially during late-night hours on weekends. The group arrived during the late evening and spent several hours at the venue. The surrounding area at the time was active but not unusual for a weekend night. Traffic volume was moderate, with vehicles moving steadily along main roads. Pedestrian activity was present, particularly near bars and social establishments. Lighting conditions varied, with streetlights illuminating major intersections, but leaving some areas less visible depending on angle and distance. As the night progressed into early morning hours, the atmosphere shifted toward lower foot traffic, but continued vehicle movement. By this time, individuals were leaving venues and transitioning either toward vehicles or walking routes. Kiera and those with her exited the venue shortly after midnight. The timeline of events places Kiera's movements between late evening on October 10th and the early morning of October 11th. After leaving the social venue, she began moving on foot with others in the direction of North 76th Street, a major roadway in Milwaukee. North 76th Street is a multi-lane road designed to carry continuous traffic flow. At night, vehicles often travel at higher speeds due to reduced congestion. The roadway intersects with West Good Hope Road, another heavily used street, creating a wide crossing area for pedestrians. Traffic conditions at that time included multiple vehicles traveling southbound and northbound. The road layout features several lanes with turning access points, which increases crossing distance for pedestrians. Street lighting was present but uneven, creating areas of brightness near intersections and darker zones between light sources. As Kiera approached the roadway, she attempted to cross North 76th Street. The decision to cross occurred during early morning hours when traffic patterns can be unpredictable. Vehicle speed at that time is often higher due to reduced enforcement presence and fewer cars on the road. As Kiera was crossing the roadway, a vehicle traveling southbound approached at a high rate of speed. The vehicle remained within its lane and did not slow as it neared the crossing area. There was no indication that the driver attempted evasive action before the collision. The impact occurred in the roadway, with the vehicle striking Kiera directly. The force of the collision caused immediate and severe trauma. Witnesses in the area reported the sound of impact and observed the vehicle continuing forward without stopping. Following the collision, the driver did not exit the vehicle or render aid. Instead, the vehicle accelerated away from the scene, leaving the area within seconds. No attempt was made to contact emergency services from the vehicle. The immediate aftermath involved bystanders calling emergency services. First responders arrived shortly after and secured the scene. Kiera was pronounced dead at the location. At that point, the incident was classified as a fatal hit-and-run. Law enforcement began documenting the scene, noting the absence of the vehicle and collecting physical evidence from the roadway. The direction of travel and damage patterns suggested the vehicle had sustained front-end impact damage. However, the driver's identity remained unknown at that time. The vehicle's departure marked a critical turning point in the case. The failure to stop transformed the incident from a traffic fatality into a criminal investigation focused on locating the driver responsible. Shortly after the collision occurred on North 76th Street, near West Good Hope Road in Milwaukee, multiple calls were placed to emergency services reporting that a pedestrian had been struck by a vehicle. Callers described a body lying in the roadway and indicated that the vehicle involved had left the scene immediately after impact. Dispatchers logged the incident as a serious traffic crash with possible fatal injuries and sent both police and emergency medical services to the location. Milwaukee police officers were the first to arrive at the scene, followed closely by fire department paramedics. Upon arrival, responders observed a female pedestrian later identified as 25-year-old Kiera Travis lying in the roadway. Traffic in the area was limited due to the late night hour, but the intersection itself remained active, requiring immediate traffic control to prevent further incidents. Paramedics assessed Travis for signs of life, while officers began securing the immediate area. Despite emergency medical efforts, Travis was pronounced dead at the scene. The determination was made based on the severity of injuries and the absence of vital signs. No transport to a hospital was initiated. Police officers established a perimeter around the crash site using squad cars and barrier tape to preserve the scene for investigation. Lanes of traffic were closed in both directions, and additional officers were called in to assist with crowd control and scene management. The area was treated as both a fatal traffic crash and a potential criminal investigation due to the driver's failure to remain at the scene. Initial observations recorded by authorities included debris scattered across the roadway, damage consistent with a high-impact collision, and markings on the pavement indicating the point of impact. Officers noted the absence of the striking vehicle and confirmed that no driver had remained to provide information or assistance. These details were documented in preliminary police reports and formed the basis of the subsequent investigation. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, investigators faced a significant obstacle. There was no suspect vehicle or driver present at the scene. The lack of an on-site driver meant that officers could not conduct standard crash interviews or field sobriety assessments. As a result, the investigation began with limited direct information. Officers canvassed the surrounding area for witnesses, including nearby pedestrians, motorists, and individuals leaving nearby establishments. Some witnesses reported hearing a loud impact, but were unable to provide a clear description of the vehicle. Others stated that the vehicle was traveling at a high rate of speed before leaving the area. The absence of a detained driver required investigators to rely heavily on physical evidence. Pieces of vehicle debris were collected from the roadway, including fragments believed to be from the front end of a vehicle. Tire marks and skid patterns were documented, photographed, and measured to assist with crash reconstruction. Police also reviewed the possibility of surveillance footage from nearby businesses, traffic cameras, and residential security systems. Requests were made for any video that may have captured the vehicle before or after collision. At the same time, law enforcement issued a public request for information, asking anyone who witnessed a crash or saw a damaged vehicle in the area to contact investigators. Early investigative challenges included limited eyewitness clarity, nighttime visibility conditions, and the time delay between the crash and the identification of a suspect. Additionally, without a vehicle immediately located, investigators could not confirm the make, model, or license plate of the car involved. These factors slowed the initial pace of the investigation and required a broader evidence-based approach. As the investigation progressed, police received information that led them to a vehicle believed to be involved in the crash. The vehicle was located days later and exhibited visible damage consistent with a pedestrian strike. The damage was primarily concentrated on the front portion of the vehicle, including the bumper and hood area. Investigators examined the vehicle and documented its condition. The nature and location of the damage aligned with the injuries observed at the scene and with the debris collected from the roadway. This comparison helped establish a connection between the vehicle and the fatal collision. Further analysis involved matching paint fragments, broken components, and other physical evidence recovered at the scene with corresponding damage on the vehicle. These matches strengthened the case that the vehicle had been involved in the incident. Once the vehicle was identified, law enforcement focused on determining who had been operating it at the time of the crash. Ownership records were reviewed, and investigators traced the vehicle to an individual residing in Milwaukee. This step marked a turning point in the case, shifting the investigation from an unknown driver to a specific suspect. The suspect was identified as a 34-year-old man from Milwaukee. Investigators reviewed his background as part of the case, focusing on information relevant to the incident rather than personal character details. Records indicated that the suspect had a prior driving history that included license-related issues. At the time of the crash, the suspect's driving privileges were revoked. This fact became a significant element of the investigation, as it established that he was not legally permitted to operate a vehicle. Investigators also examined whether the suspect had prior citations or violations that could be relevant to the case. The connection between the suspect and the recovered vehicle was confirmed through registration records and investigative interviews. Law enforcement determined that the suspect had access to and control of the vehicle involved in the crash. When questioned, the suspect acknowledged his involvement in the incident. He stated that he was driving the vehicle at the time Kiara Travis was struck. According to investigators, the suspect admitted that he did not stop after collision and left the scene. The suspect told law enforcement that he fled because he was scared and did not know how to respond after the impact. He also acknowledged that he was driving without a valid license at the time of the crash. These statements were documented and became part of the official case file. Based on the totality of evidence, including the damaged vehicle, physical evidence from the scene, and the suspect's statements, law enforcement proceeded with formal charges. The investigation transitioned from evidence gathering to prosecution, marking the final stage of the case's investigative phase. In the days following the fatal hit-and-run that killed 25-year-old Kiera Travis, Milwaukee police continued efforts to identify the driver responsible. Initial investigation focused on locating a vehicle that matched debris and damage patterns recovered from the scene at North 76th Street and Westwood Hope Road. Surveillance footage, traffic analysis, and public tips played a role in narrowing down potential leads. Investigators eventually located a vehicle with front-end damage consistent with a pedestrian collision. The vehicle was traced back to a 34-year-old Milwaukee man. After law enforcement connected the vehicle to the suspect, the individual later came into police custody. The circumstances surrounding his arrest involved questioning related to ownership and use of the vehicle during the early morning hours of October 11th. During interviews with investigators, the suspect allegedly admitted to being the driver at the time of the collision. According to law enforcement records, he acknowledged striking a pedestrian and leaving the scene shortly afterward. The suspect reportedly told officers that he fled because he was scared. He stated that after realizing he had hit someone, panic set in, and he made the decision not to stop. He did not attempt to check on the victim or contact emergency services. Investigators documented that this decision was made despite the severity of the impact and a clear likelihood of serious injury. In explaining the events leading up to the collision, the suspect claimed that he did not see Kiera Travis until it was too late to avoid impact. He described limited reaction time and stated that visibility conditions and the speed at which he was traveling prevented him from stopping in time. These claims became a key focus for investigators, who compared them against physical evidence from the scene, including skid marks, roadway lighting, and vehicle damage. During questioning, the suspect also admitted that he was driving without valid driving privileges at the time of the crash. Records showed that his driver's license had been revoked prior to the incident. This admission added another significant factor to the investigation, as operating a vehicle without legal authorization elevated the seriousness of the case. Law enforcement documented that the suspect was aware of his revoked status before getting behind the wheel that night. Following the arrest and review of investigative findings, prosecutors formally filed charges against the suspect. The primary charge was hit and run, resulting in death. Under Wisconsin law, this charge applies when a driver involved in a collision that causes fatal injury knowingly fails to stop, provide information, or render assistance. The charge reflects not only the act of striking a pedestrian, but also the decision to leave the scene without attempting to help or report the incident. Prosecutors emphasize that the law places a legal duty on drivers to remain at the scene and take reasonable steps to assist, regardless of fault. In addition to the hit-and-run charge, the suspect was charged with operating a motor vehicle while his license was revoked. This charge carries its own penalties and is treated as an aggravating factor when connected to a fatal incident. Prosecutors argued that driving without valid privileges demonstrated disregard for traffic laws and public safety. Each charge was explained during court proceedings, with prosecutors outlining how the suspect's actions met the legal elements required under state statutes. The combination of fleeing the scene and driving illegally exposed the suspect to severe consequences. Under Wisconsin law, hit and run resulting in death is classified as a felony and carries the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence if the suspect is convicted. When combined with additional charges related to driving status, the potential penalties increase significantly. These may include decades of incarceration, extended probation, fines, and a permanent revocation of driving privileges. As part of the investigation, the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office conducted a forensic examination to determine the cause and manner of Kiera Travis's death. The medical examiner's role was to provide an objective assessment based on physical injuries and medical evidence. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma resulting from a motor vehicle collision. The injuries documented were consistent with a high-impact strike involving a moving vehicle and a pedestrian. These findings confirmed that the collision was the direct and sole cause of death. The medical examination detailed multiple traumatic injuries, including severe damage consistent with being struck at speed. Investigators used these findings to assess the force of the impact and to evaluate whether the driver's claims about reaction time and visibility aligned with the physical evidence. Damage observed on the suspect's vehicle corresponded with the injuries documented in the autopsy. The height and location of damage on the front of the vehicle matched the points of contact described by forensic experts. This consistency strengthened the link between the vehicle and the fatal injuries. Forensic findings played a critical role in supporting the prosecution's case. They helped establish not only that the suspect's vehicle caused the fatal injuries, but also that the collision occurred under circumstances that would have been noticeable to the driver. This evidence directly challenged claims that the impact went unnoticed or was minor. Following confirmation of Kiera Travis's death, law enforcement notified her family. Officers met with relatives to explain what was known about the incident and to provide updates as the investigation progressed. The notification process included details about the collision and the steps being taken to identify the driver responsible. Family members later made public statements acknowledging the arrest and charges. Relatives emphasized the importance of accountability and expressed concern about the circumstances that led to Kiera being struck and left at the scene. These statements were focused on the facts of the case and the legal process moving forward. Kiera's twin sister played a visible role in speaking on behalf of the family. As someone who had been closely connected to Kiera both personally and on the night of the incident, her perspective drew attention to the immediate and lasting consequences of the driver's actions. The family called for accountability through the justice system, stating that the case should be handled fully under the law. Their focus remained on ensuring that the investigation and prosecution proceeded thoroughly and without delay. Community members responded by organizing vigils and gatherings near the site of the crash. These events served to acknowledge the incident and to highlight ongoing concerns about pedestrian safety and hit-and-run incidents in the area. The gatherings also reinforced public interest in the outcome of the case. Following the death of Kiera Travis, attention quickly shifted beyond the immediate investigation to the broader response from Milwaukee residents. News of the fatal hit-and-run circulated rapidly, particularly because it occurred at a major intersection on the city's north side. Residents familiar with the area recognized North 76th Street and Westwood Hope Road as a heavily trafficked corridor where speeding is common, especially during late-night hours. Community discussion centered on the circumstances of the crash rather than personal narratives. Many residents pointed out that pedestrian crossings at the intersection are difficult due to wide lanes, limited visibility at night, and frequent traffic violations. The incident renewed public focus on pedestrian safety, particularly in areas where nightlife, bars, and late-hour activity increase foot traffic across major roadways. Broader concerns emerged about reckless driving patterns in Milwaukee. Residents referenced ongoing issues involving excessive speed, failure to yield to pedestrians, and disregard for traffic signals. The case of Kiera Travis was frequently mentioned alongside previous incidents in which pedestrians were struck by drivers who either fled the scene or were later found to be operating vehicles unlawfully. Discussions also included comparisons to similar fatal incidents across the city, highlighting a pattern rather than an isolated event. The community context surrounding the case reflected growing concern about enforcement consistency, roadway design, and accountability for drivers involved in serious traffic offenses. The legal process began with the suspect's initial court appearance following arrest. During this appearance, formal charges were read, including hit-and-run resulting in death and operating a vehicle while driving privileges were revoked. The court reviewed the circumstances of the arrest and the alleged statements made to law enforcement. Bail considerations focus on several factors: the seriousness of the charges, the defendant's driving history, and the risk of flight. Prosecutors emphasized the decision to flee the scene and the alleged admission that the suspect was aware of his revoked license status at the time of the crash. These factors were presented as justification for strict bail conditions or continued detention. The prosecution's approach centered on establishing a clear sequence of events. This included linking the recovered vehicle to the collision, outlining the timeline from the crash to the suspect's identification, and emphasizing the legal obligation of a driver to stop and render aid after an accident involving injury or death. The prosecution also highlighted the statutory penalties associated with hit-and-run offenses under Wisconsin law. The defense position focused on limiting intent and disputing aggravating factors. Defense arguments reference claims that the suspect did not see the pedestrian in time and that fear influenced his decision to leave the scene. The defense also sought to separate the act of fleeing from the cause of the collision itself. The timeline of legal proceedings moved through preliminary hearings, evidence review, and scheduling for future court dates. Each stage involved procedural steps rather than substantive conclusions, with the case progressing through the judicial system according to standard criminal process. The case of Kiera Travis raised broader questions about hit-and-run incidents involving pedestrians. Such cases often involve compounded violations, including speeding, distracted driving, or driving without valid authorization. When a driver flees, investigations become more complex, delaying accountability and increasing scrutiny of enforcement mechanisms. Driving with a revoked license was a central issue in this case. Under state law, operating a vehicle after revocation is treated as a serious offense, particularly when it results in injury or death. The consequences extend beyond criminal charges and include long-term restrictions on driving privileges and enhanced penalties. Systemic issues related to traffic enforcement also came under discussion. These include how revoked licenses are monitored, whether habitual offenders are effectively prevented from driving, and how traffic violations escalate into more serious outcomes. The case highlighted gaps between administrative penalties and real-world compliance. Questions of deterrence and accountability emerged as well. Critics questioned whether existing penalties are sufficient to discourage reckless driving or fleeing the scene. Others pointed to the need for structural changes, such as improved street design, increased enforcement presence, and stronger follow-up on license revocations. At the time of reporting, the case remained active within the court system. The defendant had been formally charged and was awaiting further legal proceedings. No final verdict had been reached, and sentencing had not occurred. The case was positioned in the pretrial or trial preparation phase, depending on court scheduling and motions filed by both sides. Prosecutors continued to prepare evidence, while the defense evaluated legal strategies and potential challenges. Several questions remained unresolved, including the final determination of culpability, the outcome of pending hearings, and the length of any potential sentence if conviction were secured. These unanswered elements underscore the ongoing nature of the legal process. The events surrounding the death of Kiera Travis followed a documented sequence. A pedestrian struck at a major intersection, a driver fleeing the scene, an investigation leading to an arrest, and formal charges filed in court. The case progressed through established legal channels without deviation from procedural norms. The factual outcome of the night remains clear. A collision occurred, emergency responders arrived, and a life was lost. Subsequent actions by the driver and law enforcement shaped the direction of the investigation and legal response. The lasting impact of the case lies in its contribution to ongoing discussions about pedestrian safety, traffic enforcement, and accountability for drivers. Beyond the courtroom, the case continues to be referenced in broader conversations about road safety and legal responsibility. Why the case continues to matter is rooted in these unresolved issues. It reflects challenges faced by urban communities nationwide and illustrates how a single incident can expose wider systemic concerns that extend far beyond one intersection. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.